Good afternoon and welcome to Facebook Live at the Corrals. My name is Shannon Williams and I'm an Extension Educator with the University of Idaho in Lemhi County. And so yes, no, I'm not really at the Corrals today. I'm in the shop standing next to the vaccine fridge as we're going to talk about vaccine handling. One of the goals of spring cattle work is to keep your cattle healthy, to do that ounce of prevention so that you don't need a pound of cure when something's getting sick. But if you compromise your vaccine before it reaches that animal, you might as well just give me the money you spent on the vaccine. We need to take care when we're handling our vaccine. I wanted to talk to you about a few things and tips so that you're successful in your vaccine, successful when you utilize it on your animals. In Lemhi County and most areas, you have two options to purchase vaccine. You can get it from a local retailer or your local veterinarian, or you can order it online and have it shipped directly to you. If you are ordering it online and having it shipped, I encourage you, place that order on Monday. The reason for this is that gives it time to be shipped during the working week, so it's not sitting on a shipping dock someplace, getting warm and the ice melting in the bottom of the cooler before it arrives at your house. Get a tracking number and be prepared when it does arrive. Don't plan to have it arrive while you've decided to go for a drive in the hills because it's too muddy to work cattle or it's snowing outside again and the wind's blowing, similar to what it's doing today. You don't want that vaccine sitting on your front porch in the sunshine. So plan accordingly. If you are going to be gone, have a neighbor watch for the delivery truck so they can go pick it up and check that vaccine. Once you get that vaccine, open that box, open the cooler immediately, check it with your hand. Is it still cool? Is this ice pack that it's packed in still cool to the touch? If it is if it's warm, you need to call the company immediately and let them know that your vaccine may be compromised while it's been being shipped. If you purchase your vaccine locally, when you go to the feed store, look in that cooler where your vaccine's stored and see if there's a thermometer in there. Don't be afraid to ask, hey, do you track the temperature of your vaccine coolers? Are you writing it down? When we were doing some refrigerator and cooler studies through the state of Idaho, the number of retailers that were not handling their vaccine properly before it got to you was alarming. And so the best way to get your favorite retailer to step up their game is to ask them some questions. 1, do you have a thermometer in that refrigerator? 2, how often are you reading that thermometer? A thermometer is only as good as often as we read it. And 3, are they writing it down? Is it being refrigerated before it hits the display floor? Does your storage area have a refrigerator, and is it being monitored too? Once you get that vaccine from the retailer, either be prepared and take a cooler with you or ask them for a cooler to transport the vaccine in along with some ice packs. Most labels that you read for vaccine that requires refrigeration, it needs to be stored between 35 and 45 degrees. Outside that window is not recommended. And so you need to follow the instructions. The instructions are the law. The instructions and the storage is what the vaccine company stands behind. If it's outside that window and you knowingly compromised it, you are out of luck. So read those instructions. Most of it is 35 to 45 degrees. Now on a day like today, where it's about 38 degrees outside, minus the wind, then you're probably good. But any warmer than that, or if you're going to put it on the floorboard of your truck and you have the heater going, or if you have heated seats and they're turned on, don't set your vaccine there to get it from the retailer to home. A cooler is always the best way to transport that vaccine. So, as we move forward, you've got your vaccine and you get it to the ranch. Well, the first place you put it is in your trusty refrigerator. Now, there is a lot of difference between refrigerators. When we were doing this study, and we were putting log temp recorders in a lot of producers' refrigerators across the state of Idaho, and I did a bunch here in Lemhi County. I would walk into a shop similar as this, or a worm room, or the barn, and there would be a really, really old fridge, older than me, and I would say, oh, I'm not sure this is going to work. Actually, they were the best. Because as you look at the newer refrigerators, and if you look at newer refrigerators on the showroom floor by chance, and you read the labels, it says they should not be used in an uninsulated room or one without heat. They are not built like the tough ones that our grandparents had with extra insulation to maintain inside temperature and not be so influenced by outside temperature. And where do we get most of our vaccine refrigerators? You put a new one in the house, so the old one comes outside for the vaccine. That may not always be the best idea. But to know for sure what your refrigerator is doing is a refrigerator thermometer. It is the best $2 to $10 that you will invest, and it's much cheaper than buying yourself a new refrigerator. So let's see what this fridge is doing. So this refrigerator right now has been in here. This thermometer, I brought it in from my house refrigerator, has been in for about 20 minutes, and it is on the lower end of the 32 degrees. It's setting right at 34, meaning it's cold outside, this fridge is cold inside. If I was to leave this thermometer and my vaccine in here all night with as cold as it's supposed to get, my vaccine would probably risk being frozen. Frozen vaccine is a compromised vaccine, so you need to think about that. As we were doing studies and leaving log temps in refrigerators, I had a refrigerator up to lead ore, and by the time I got back up there, that log temp logger had been in there for about 48, 52 hours. And the log temps recorded the temperature every 20 minutes. So I had a whole lot of data. And as I pulled the data from that refrigerator, it was holding right where it needed to be, just straight across, like, oh, this is really, really super good, good refrigerator. All of a sudden it just plummeted. And I'm going, what's going on here? So I called the producer and said, hey, you know, were you into that fridge? Did it not get closed good? What's going on? He didn't have any vaccine in there, luckily. And this was in December in Leadore, Idaho. So, you know, it's a little bit chilly. Well, we got to go back through the weather records, and that fridge was doing super when it was 10, 20 degrees in Leadore in December. But when it dropped to below zero on the outside, that fridge crashed. And if that producer had had vaccines stored, it would have been frozen solid. So his isn't the only refrigerator that has problems. This is a graph, and I realize it's kind of hard to see, but you can see the bright green. That is just over a third of the refrigerators in the state of Idaho for producers that held the temperature for vaccine storage where it needed to be between 95% of the time. This great big red, those are the refrigerators that were not doing their job. The yellow are the ones that are somewhere in between. Now, the cool part about this, and we didn't follow up with a lot of them, most of those refrigerators could have been fixed without buying a new fridge. You could have, once you had that temperature knowing on it, you could have moved it to a different location. Mostly, go in and adjust the knobs on the inside of it. There's knobs to adjust a refrigerator, believe it or not. We don't always use them a whole lot, but you can adjust how warm or cold that refrigerator is getting. So put that thermometer in your fridge and check it every couple of days and see where it's at. You can actually get a thermometer that has a little alarm that hangs on the outside that you can take and utilize. And you walk by and see it, or if it's out of not between 35 and 45 degrees, it sets off an alarm. I had one producer, when I gave him his new temperature thermometer for being part of the study, he called me and chewed me out because his alarm was going off all the time. It was like, go adjust your refrigerator and it'll be quiet. And it did. But he had heads up of how not functioning his refrigerator was. So spend the time, invest in a good thermometer, put it in your vaccine fridge so you know what's going on inside that refrigerator, so you're not compromising that vaccine, either getting too warm or too cold. When you're buying your vaccine, don't buy a whole bunch thinking, oh, okay, I'll get all stocked up for spring and fall. Just because it's a good deal, they're having a sale, it won't expire. That's great. And I applaud you for being economically minded. But if your refrigerator goes south and your vaccine's compromised, you just lost a whole bunch of money. I had a producer and went and took the log tech out of his refrigerator. He had stocked up very well on vaccine and, you know, thinking forward. They were having a great sale. I called him and I said, go take that vaccine out of your refrigerator. He says, why? I says, because about as it cycles, it's dropping down to 28 and then it's jumping up to almost 50 in between times. You have a problem with that fridge and you're compromising the vaccine every time that temperature adjusts. So he did. He got his refrigerator adjusted. Things were good and he took care of his problem. As you're looking at your vaccine and trying to figure out how much to purchase and what size of bottles to purchase, think how many animals you can put in your alley. Think about how many total animals you need to vaccinate. Do it in chute loads. This will help not only save yourself getting in and out of your coolers all the time to get vaccine and exposing it to sunlight, but also help you when we talk next week about vaccinations in the corral, when to change your needles. So think forward on that. So once you're going to the corral, you're getting ready to go to the corral, you want to take a good cooler. I also did some work with log techs and coolers to see how well are they holding and what ones work. While this one's kind of fun and it was inexpensive, this is not the cooler you want to take your vaccine to the corral in. It does not hold the cold in long enough not to compromise that, regardless of how much ice you put in that cooler. So you want a nice hard-sided cooler. You want to be sure to include some ice packs, or if you have a bigger cooler, this is just a half-gallon jug of water. I threw in the freezer. It will work too. Because you want that to be nice and cold. You want to know how cold it is outside to know how much ice is packed. You may want to take and pre-cool your cooler. If it's been inside and your house is running about 70 degrees, it's not a bad idea to put that ice pack in that cooler and cool that cooler down a little bit before you include your vaccine in there. That way when you put it in, you're not putting it into a hot environment and causing it to overheat and then have to cool back down. Only take enough vaccine to take and get done what you're going to do in the morning. You know you're going to break for lunch, then get another load out of the refrigerator and go that direction. You don't want to put your coolers in the sun. Put them in underneath the back of the pickup, the tailgate, or a table and keep them out of the sunshine. As we're talking about vaccines, when you're looking at it and you're getting ready, you want to be sure and read your inserts. I know, lots of little tiny print, but this has all the information that you need to know about the vaccine. What the active ingredient is, what diseases is it going to prevent. Most importantly, how much to give. That is vitally important because just because last year you had the same vaccine and you gave 2 cc's last year, doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving 2 cc's again this year. Vaccine companies are always doing new products, they're updating, they're refining their practices. So you need to take and read this and look at that. Also, you want to know what your withdrawal times are. Look at that, especially if you're getting ready to ship cattle or anything that way. Check the expiration dates. Is it still good? How long is it good for? When we did refrigerator studies, you would have chuckled at the amount of stuff that we found that was way expired, like a couple years expired, in refrigerators. There's no need to store that. It's no longer any good. So toss it and use the fresh. You may think, well, it could still be good, and you're not going to get a vaccine rep to tell you, yes, it's still good, but why worry about the time and energy you spent to save a couple of pennies or maybe even a whole dollar by using an opened, expired vaccine? Please use the new one. Your cattle's health is worth it. I've had a couple of producers say, Shannon, if vaccine can be compromised, we get it out, we don't get it in the right spot, we don't get it, how come our cattle are still healthy? Well, here's my thoughts. You have a good vaccination program. You keep them regularly vaccinated. You work with your veterinarians to have a protocol. You know what need to vaccinate for. So you're building immunity all of the time. But that's not a reason to slack off on your vaccine handling. So if I can encourage you to do a couple of things, one, go purchase a refrigerator thermometer and put it in where you're storing vaccine. Check that refrigerator and make sure it's staying between 35 and 40 degrees. When you buy your vaccines, get it from a reputable dealer, check their refrigerators, make sure they have a thermometer and their coolers are working and keeping that vaccine where it needs to be. You will be much more successful if your vaccine is ready and has not been compromised before you get to the corrals. So join us next week and we'll do vaccination handling or vaccinations at the corral and talk some BQA. So thank you and have a great day.